Hello and welcome back to awtoolbox.com. My name's Glenn Keller, and in this video we are exploring the 3D and 2D capabilities available in the Active Workspace client. And we're going to be looking more at the using side in this one, where we're exploring what kind of options we have across the top, as well as how to interact with that data. So to begin with, inside of this video, we have our cutting head assembly that was provided by Sherpa Design. And we've opened it up and we can see a lot of different components in it. Now you can use the one that you own or one of the other ones or your own assembly if need be, but the goal here is that this is not one giant JT or visualization component. This is a combination of all of the components all overlaid on top of each other with their own origin that completes the assembly. So in here, if you wanted to see an individual component, you can click that component and then it will turn a different color at that point and it'll gray out the rest. If you wanted to come in, you could see the information about that selected object inside of the display. And just note that if you're coming in from scratch, you do need to be able to select this 3D tab here to get that to show. So just a couple of other key components here. As I highlight different elements, they will highlight in the display, and then you can also click the icon on one of these elements and it will turn off the visualization for those components. So if you keep doing this, sooner or later you'll get down to where there's not much left in the display. So in here, if you wanted to really look at what the 3D components render, if you switch over to the Details tab on a selected component, go to Attachments, and what this is actually rendering out is the direct model dataset associated to the object. If you don't have this here under the Files location, then this object isn't going to render in your 3D tab. So this is the object or component we're looking at, and then the list of those for each one of the components makes up the assembly as a whole. Now, if I come into my home, the way that I open up an assembly from scratch with 3D components is I'll go in and I'll find something I know to have 3D data on it. Now, if you're in your own environment, that data will vary widely, but in here I'll find something. So if I'm selecting an individual component, like this flag, then I can easily access the 3D tab on this individual component without being in a structure view. Select it, you can see there's a direct model dataset. I'm going to select the 3D tab, and what this will do is it'll basically just render the one JT for that one component. So I can see that here. If I wanted to see it in kind of a full assembly component, I can go to the Where Used tab, and it will tell me what assemblies this component is in. So in this case, it's the grind fixture. I'm going to go ahead and open that assembly up full screen because that's an assembly, not an individual component. And then I can go up to the top here and choose 3D to activate my 3D visualization components. Now, there are some error messages if this system goes down that'll say you can't access it. So if you run into those, definitely let your administrator know. But you can see how the whole assembly comes in, and then I can say I don't want to see the cross roller, so I'll turn that component off. And now I'm getting a little bit more into what I want. Notice that there is PMI on here, or information that could be presented on the display depending on how you have it oriented. And then the visualization components will interact with your selections. Now, across the top of the screen, notice that you can take snapshots, you can view a gallery of snapshots, you can select by area, you can do a volume selection, you can select between your standard views like ortho, ISO, top, bottom, left, right. You can see things in different ways, so whether or not you want to see or show selected components. So if I hide selected, you'll see that disappear here in a second, and now I'm left with only the non-selected components. If I go to capture snapshot at this point, then I could basically come in here, rotate this around, get it to the way I want. And then I've got that. I'll go ahead and open my gallery. And you can see my snapshot is right here. So I can capture snapshot. And that adds a new snapshot to this component. Then I can select the snapshot or the new snapshot, and I can say apply snapshot, rename the snapshot, etc., and that'll actually open up and show me. So if I do this one and hit apply, then it'll load that snapshot up for the gallery. If I go to images, notice that any images that are referenced to this will be underneath here. So those will be like thumbnails or JPEGs. And then snapshots of any one occurrence that I want to save will be here. Now, if I wanted to see snapshots shared with me from other members of my group, then I could do that and see those. Now, area select is a little different. You don't have to pinpoint the object you want. You can just select and drag, and it will only select the objects that are within that square. So in this case, it selected all of those and not these two components. If I do volume select, then at this point, I can come in here and I'll need to provide the starting point, which you can see kind of drew up here. And then I can say accept, and I've created a little box, and everything within that box will then be highlighted. So let me do that again. Volume, see how you get the cancel and accept. I'm going to rotate this around, click and draw. See how it's turning purple. Going to get that back. I'm just trying to aim at a good selection so everybody can see it. So I'm going to say drag. Okay. And then I'm going to select this and this. Volume selection allows you to come in and basically work with selecting a specific volume, and then within that volume you'll see the data. If you do standard views, you've got top view, which it'll put you in the top view. You could switch to bottom view, which will rotate it around. You can go left or right side, and that'll position it nice and in the view for you. You could also do isometric, positive or negative. Visibility controls allows you to show all, hide all, or clean the 3D view, which basically gets rid of any measurements or sectioning that you may have applied. I'm going to show all at the moment, which will turn on everything that is open in this assembly. Up at the top, see there's a transparent selection. So I could say part color selection or transparent. I'm going to go ahead and pick transparent selection. And then in here, if I select a component, notice everything else kind of grays out and goes invisible. If I rotate this around, notice I can see through the other components. If I click the transparent selection again and I turn that off, and then select, you'll see that the object will actually come back into view and it's behind the other element. So in here, I'll pick it just kind of from the side here, and you can see transparent selection is there. So I'm going to come in here and say part color selection, which is a little different. And when I select part color selection, you'll see it load up, and I can pick this component again. But this time, it'll actually highlight the whole thing orange, say, or red, depending on what I do. It's not going to go transparent for me and show me the component. If I like to switch to transparent selection over part color selection, but again, that does depend on what kind of graphics card you have natively. I'm going to go ahead and do a rotate around, and I could do a pan or a zoom if I wanted to. So I could come in here and select pan, and then I could zoom in or move it up or down in the display, and you can see the PMI information or the information that's presented on it. I could take measurements, so if I switch from pan to zoom or rotate and just kind of get it into a position that I like, maybe I need to take a couple of measurements as a part of my task. So I'm going to click measure. And then at that point, it should pop up with some things that I can select. So I could do parts, surfaces, edges, points, vertices, arc centers, etc. So in this case, I'm going to measure from this line right here, this vertical line. And then I'm going to go all the way over to the far side vertical line on the edge and take a measurement there. So you can see this is 0.197 meters. So I'm going to left click to lock it in. And then if you try and right click on it, notice you could delete it or you could copy it down. But that measurement will stay even if you rotate the object. And then the verbiage and the wording will actually rotate to stay flush with the screen. You could also do things like vertices or arcs if you wanted to. So if I select this right here and then this right here, it'll show me the distance between those two. So arc center to that outer line. Now, if I wanted to remove those, I could say all or a selected one. So I'll hit all, and it'll remove those after a confirmation window and get rid of those out of the screen for me. So measurement gives you a lot of power. Definitely play around with those different options. And then you can also see things like geometric information is also an option here. And if I select a component, let's say the center of this circle here, the cylinder, you can see I get information regarding that point. So I didn't actually get the arc center like I wanted to, so I'll do the circle. And then in this case, it'll tell me information about that. So my geometric information will be presented. And then again, I could right click on it and choose delete to remove it after I get it on there. I can also go about doing sectioning. So let me go ahead and open a different assembly up in here, something a little bit bigger. Let's do the cut. And then I should get one of my cutting head assemblies. I'll just go ahead and use the original. I'm going to open this up. Notice there's no 3D tab because it is an assembly. So I'm going to open it up here. And then I'm going to go ahead and switch to my 3D component view. And it will load up. Now this little prompt up at the top definitely tells you when things are loading, but just pay attention if it loads all the way. It may take a little bit to actually render to the screen on bigger assemblies. But let's say I wanted to take a cross section of this component and do a couple of measurements in here. So I'm going to go ahead and come up to the top and I'm going to say create section. Notice the origin down in the corner. You can use this to kind of rotate around or pick your views, but it'll show you that the Z and X axis is this way. I want my section to be on the X and Y axis. So I'm going to select that. And then once it loads up, I'll be able to interact with that section. So here we go. I get this big origin in the middle, and you can see that it is loaded up. So now I can see my section and I can expand it and I can create a new section, or I can see the section that's on the display at the moment. So this is the section I have currently, and I can offset it if I would like. So I can move it up or down. You'll see it kind of move through the component. And then clipping direction, I can change to near side. So that'll effectively cut off everything that is near to me above that plane. So if I then move this down or up, you'll see the components begin to render out. So I can add multiple sections and measure that way and close this after the fact. So there's a lot of different capability that you can work with inside of the viewer in Active Workspace. It definitely is faster if you have better CPU utilization on the back end, streaming out those components, or maybe a faster computer on the front end, but a lot of the rendering for these elements are actually getting baked into the browser window in newer versions. So it's not as dependent upon what the graphics card on the machine does and more about how WebGL interacts, but that gets into more of the back end there. The toolbar that you have across the top is completely dependent upon what kind of license that you have for visualization if you are opening this up in like native viz. But in here, I get these and I don't have a visualization license per se. This comes cooked with the Active Workspace client. We hope you learned a little bit about visualization inside of Active Workspace in this demonstration. Definitely take a look at other posts, our blog, etc. on more information about using Active Workspace as a whole.